So, Madam Speaker, what are we here today? Well, we're here to talk about the Conservative Opposition Day motion addressing the Liberal government's ban of the sale of gas-powered vehicles that will force Canadians to buy electrical vehicles, and this House calling upon them to immediately end this ban. But what's this debate really about, Madam Speaker? It's really about freedom, choice, and common sense. I got involved in politics, Madam Speaker. Mainly, one of the key overriding factors was because of the increasing rural-urban divide that I see across Canada. I was tired of seeing decisions coming out of Ottawa by this Liberal government that force policies and legislations on rural Canadians that may work for some of our urban centres, but not the rest of the country. This EV ban is just one such example. So let's assume this Liberal ban continues, Madam Speaker. So broad brush, what's actually needed to implement this Liberal policy of banning gas vehicles and having nothing but EVs on the road en masse? I'm really going to focus on the infrastructure challenge, Madam Speaker. We need transmission and distribution lines. We need housing infrastructure. We need charging infrastructures. We need road infrastructure. And then finally, we need affordable and reliable EVs. Specifically, let's look at the transmission and distribution lines. The government's own department, the Natural Resources Canada, has estimated, quote, of grid upgrades required to meet EV demand, including generation, transmission, and distribution, ranges from $26 billion to $294 billion, mid-range of $94 billion, over the 2025 to 2040 period, reflecting the significant uncertainty around the magnitude of costs as well as regional variations, unquote. Very much aligned, Madam Speaker, with, I remember a conversation I had a couple years ago with Electricity Canada and all the major stakeholders involved there. The sheer amount of money that needs to be put in to upgrade these lines is immense. Where's the federal support for that? Where's the provincial support? Where's the private industry support? Not even close to what is needed to meet this mandate that the Liberals are proposing. Next, let's look at housing infrastructure. Many rural Canadians and senior Canadians, but even in my own riding and myself alone, I live in a 150-year-old farmhouse. I am going to rip down and build a new one, but in the meantime, I'm using glass fuses. I have the power line that runs from the road into my house could not handle an electric vehicle even if I wanted it to replace it all. I'm just one example, and unfortunately I'm privileged enough to be able to eventually change and fix that, but that's not the case for the average constituent in my riding of Bruce Grey, Owen Sound. As well, the largest appetite for EVs actually comes in our more urban areas, but those people living in apartments, condos, where they actually don't even have access or control the necessary charging infrastructure needed in their houses. Approximately 34% of households in Canada live in apartments. This is a huge issue. Charging infrastructure. Right now, there's approximately, I believe, 34,000 charging stations across Canada. Again, Natural Resources Canada reports forecast 680,000 public charging ports are needed to meet this Liberal mandate. Where's the plan? Where's the investment? And who's going to pay for all this infrastructure, Madam Speaker? Road infrastructure. Our current roads are ill-equipped enough to handle the increased weight of electric vehicles. If by 2035 we see Canadians only able to purchase new electric vehicles, provincial and municipal budgets will be getting eaten up by the cost of road repairs alone. Provincial governments, as brought up earlier in the debate, mainly use the revenue generated from gas taxes. They dedicate to that to building and fixing the roads. That will no longer be available. So that's just highlights, Madam Speaker, on the challenges on infrastructure alone. The costs. On average, well, I'll quote actually Trevor Melanson from Clean Energy Canada, where he says that the biggest barrier preventing Canadians from going to EVs, quote, the biggest barrier by far is the sticker price, unquote. The minimum price is $15,000 over a brand new gas-powered vehicle. I would argue that's if you're looking at high-end gas vehicles. So the next question, Madam Speaker, is addressing we need affordable and reliable and available EVs that Canadians actually want. So do Canadians want them? Again, let's look at a recent survey just published in the last couple months or weeks asking about consumers about their purchasing intentions. 45% of Canadians say that they quite possibly would considering buying an EV. However, Madam Speaker, this is a 13% decrease compared to when this question was asked in 2022. So the bottom line, Madam Speaker, the situation has changed. I spent 25 years in the military. Part of the process that we go through when we do what's called battle procedure or ready to deploy into battle or an operation, we go through this whole tactical process. What's the last thing we do? We ask ourselves, has the situation changed? Guess what, Madam Speaker? We're in an affordability crisis. We're dealing with tariffs. We're dealing with a situation that no longer can we afford to go down this mandate. We need to revisit it. As well, I mentioned earlier about the urban-rural divide. So not surprising, the majority of urban Canadians, statistics indicate somewhere between 52 to 69%, actually wouldn't mind an EV. All the power to them. Let them buy an electric vehicle. But as I've outlined, Madam Speaker, for those of us in rural Canada, this is not an option. And the interest isn't there. Let's talk about reliability of electric vehicles, Madam Speaker. CAA found that EVs lose up to 40% of their battery life in cold weather. And this was a test that was done in the -7 to -15 degrees Celsius range. It's actually pretty balmy for those that live in Western Canada, even in rural Ontario. I just went through one of the worst winters that we've had in likely decades for the sheer amount of snowfall. I know if you get stuck out there in that snow, in a snowstorm, the one thing that I carry around is a spare gas can. So I'm not going to run out of gas. I can keep myself warm. People driving an EV don't have that same option. What about the impact that this ban, this mandate, will have on the Canadian economy? And will these EVs even be available? Ford Canada CEO Bev Goodman just said on June the 10th, quote, "The targets on full battery electric vehicles needs to be aligned with what customers want and customers have spoken. Ultimately, it will have a negative impact if these mandates stick on the industry. It will have downward pressure on vehicle sales, it will have upward pressure on pricing, and those are real concerns for consumers and as the industry as a whole." So, Madam Speaker, to summarize in conclusion, this Liberal EV mandate makes no sense. It's unrealistic. There's no plan for infrastructure, whether transmission lines, charging stations, home upgrades, road upgrades, while negatively impacting Canadians' jobs and making life more expensive. I'm not opposed to Canadians who want to buy or drive an EV. However, this EV mandate disproportionately impacts rural Canadians and seniors, and it takes away their choices of freedom. This mandate needs to end now.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Chief Government Whip.
So if we were to assume on the low end that the average vehicle uses about 100,000 liters of gas, that would be on the low end in its lifetime, and the average price of gas right now is $1.20 a liter. That means that driving an EV would save people over the lifespan of the vehicle $120,000. Wow. You would come nowhere close to spending a quarter of that on electricity. Wow. So even if the price tag of the vehicle to purchase, in his words, was $15,000 more, the average person is going to save tens of thousands of dollars more over the lifetime of the vehicle. Notwithstanding the fact that the sticker price is still going to be an impedance to a number of people, which I agree with the member on, would he not agree that over the lifetime of the vehicle, people would see a significant cost savings?
Honourable Member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
I'm not going to disagree with the member that over the lifetime for somebody that's able to buy the vehicle in the first place, maybe it is, and they could save money. He's missing the whole point in my speech. You're forcing people to make this decision that don't have the option to buy it in the first place. And for ridings like my own in Bruce Grey Owen Sound, the infrastructure doesn't exist to either, even if you buy the vehicle, to charge it in your own house, to drive it around my riding without running out of a charge, or constantly just keeping yourself minimized to where you can go. and it's not realistic. So what we need to do, build the infrastructure, come out with the plan. The market will drive people's choices in the future, Madam Speaker.
Honorable la députée de Jonquière.
The honourable member for Jonquière. I find it rather surprising to hear when my colleague says that a policy that incentivizes people to buy EV would have a disproportionate impact on Canadians. He spent his time demonizing electric vehicles. I live 660 kilometers away from Ottawa. I travel in an electric vehicle. I wait 15 to 20 minutes to charge my car up, so it's one of the best solutions. The only disproportionate effect that I see is that of the oil and gas sector on the environment. It's that of combustion vehicles on the environment. Yes, that has a disproportionate effect, but I don't understand my colleague's reasoning on this.
For Bruce Gray, Owen Sound.
Look, Madam Speaker, as I said countless times in my speech in my previous response, I have nothing against Canadians that want the choice and can afford to buy an electric vehicle. I won't disagree with the lifetime of the vehicle that potentially can save consumers or people money. I don't disagree with the argument of the potential climate benefits that EVs have over a gas-powered vehicle. My point is, it's not there, and you can't force Canadians to go down this path. You can incentivize. Where are the incentives? Where's the plan? Where's the infrastructure needed to make this happen? If the government lays this all out and be upfront with transparent and let the market get there, then we'll eventually get there, and technology will drive us there. But we're not there yet, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Kitchener South Hepson? Nope. What is his writing? Yellowhead? Yellowhead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Appreciate the comments from my colleague here. I heard that he said that he's from rural area. My rural area is the third largest in Alberta at 83,000 square kilometers. There's sections where we have 200 kilometers. The sign says, make sure you fill up. You've got 200 kilometers before there's any services. How are we going to have, when there's not even services for any kind of vehicles, how are the people in our rural areas going to be able to handle any kind of that? And for me as a farmer, how am I going to pull my stock trailer with an electric vehicle?
The honourable member for Bruce Gray, Owen Sound.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Look, I fully agree with my colleague's point. This is what I tried to highlight. For rural Canadians, it's just not an option. And he targeted specifically for the farmers, for those driving pickup trucks. Look, I've been driving a pickup truck now since, I think, 1997. I'm never going to own another vehicle other than a pickup truck as my primary vehicle, because living on a small farm, getting around, doing what I need to do, it's essential. Would I like to buy an electric vehicle or have another option, or maybe even a hybrid? I looked at it, and I do well, Madam Speaker. I can't afford to even buy a used hybrid right now to find one on the market, right? And again, I'm somebody that's doing okay. There's so many Canadians where vehicles turn into being almost the second most largest cost for them. We need to make it affordable before we can actually mandate it on all Canadians, Madam Speaker.
Debate.